Hi, everyone. Welcome to this month's HR Tech Couch Club. Lydia, Mercedes, and I are very excited to have Vin Vashishta join us today. We are going to be talking about, all this, what probably you all see on your LinkedIn feed every day is, what impact is AI having on jobs? I'll let Vin introduce a little bit about himself, which will give you a little bit of an understanding as to who he is, and then we'll kind of talk, introduce the topic a little bit in more detail, and also just Lydia, Mercedes, and myself. Maybe we'll give a quick little introduction for those that are new to our little monthly couch club here. So Vin, go ahead.
I'm Vin Vashishta, three-time founder, one successful exit. I'm CEO of V Squared AI. We're one of the first pure play data and AI consultancy companies. We helped the Global 2K deliver since 2012 over 3.7 billion, which sounds like a crazy number, but we've been this for so long now. It sort of adds up, doesn't it? 3.7 billion in value delivered. I love saying that. Best-selling author of From Data to Profit. Got to plug my book. Always remember that one. Won some awards. LinkedIn Top Voice, Gartner Ambassador, Analytica Top Voice. Been in technology now for over 30 years. My technical expertise comes from building and leading teams at every phase in the data science development life cycle, as well as the software before that, software development life cycle. Uh, Technical proficiency, I guess you could say, is in data science, machine learning, complex systems modeling, dynamical systems modeling, knowledge graphs, things around pricing models and customer behavioral modeling and social media prediction. But I've also worked in the HR tech space. I've built two recruiting automation platforms and an HR analytics platform.
Hmm. I did not know that.
I do have a little experience here, so I'm willing to tell you what your job is.
So we were just having some interesting conversations offline about mansplaining. So
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
that was a good plug there. But I forgot to mention for those that have joined us, just so we know that we're not talking into the abyss, go ahead and let us know in the comments where you're calling from. If you have your drink of choice that you're drinking, or any other topic that you'd like to introduce yourself. And then throughout, feel free to chime in with questions. We do have our stock questions that we're going to ask of Vin and of each other, just to make sure we don't run out of things to talk about, which I never worry about happening with this group. But if you have questions or thoughts or what have you, we love to hear them. And we can kind of pull that in, because we often go off script, and that's the best and funnest part. So Lydia, your little quick blurb about who you are for those that don't know you.
Yes, hi everyone. Lydia Wu here, founder and creator behind Whips Did I Think That Out Loud, HR Tech for 15 years. Have been both a traumatized buyer and also have seen the full 360 from the vendor side to the investor side and the consulting side.
Oh, we lost your audio, Mercedes. While
And
you
while we're waiting for Mercedes, this is watered down lychee juice that is in the mug. It is currently 9:30 p.m. where I am right now.
Yeah. Do you want to try one more time? Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so I'm calling from South Carolina today. So, hi, Mercedes Sullivan, and I'm the head of HR of McKinley, a workforce housing company. Before that, I spent about a decade doing HR PMO, so all of delivery and productizing and moving to an agile transformation within HR. Did a little bit of tech, a little bit of consulting, and right now, I am very excited to debate with our friend Vin here, but from everything that I'm hearing, I'm kind of agreeing. So I'm a pot stirrer. So I cannot wait to find something that we're going to be like, hey. But Vin, when I heard your background, I'm like, maybe I'll tone it down a bit with the pot stirring. But no, I'm up for the challenge. So
And Martha here. I'm dialing in from Austin, Texas, and I have an extensive HR background, but got some data science training, and then moved into the people analytics space about 5 or 6 years ago. Do people analytics, and also learn and kind of just suck in anything I can learn about AI along the way. But yeah, that's who we are. And so today we brought Vin because he works with a lot of companies around their AI strategy, monetizing AI, really bringing AI into their business. And so we thought it would be interesting to get the perspective of somebody who's not necessarily, sitting at the table with HR. Maybe, hopefully, HR is at those tables, but he's kind of bringing more of that business lens of, how are we going to make money? And hopefully, it's more making money and not cutting costs, but that's one of the topics that we'll talk about. And just really thinking about or hearing from him, like what he's seeing on how AI is shaping jobs. If you're not following him, definitely encourage the follow on LinkedIn, because, he posts a lot of stuff about what companies are doing, mistakes they're making, what he's seeing that companies that are adopting AI well, and so forth. So, but usually we like to open up with a quick little question to go round robin. And so today's question is, what's one kind of misconception about AI or overhyped kind of idea about AI when it comes to jobs that every time you see it, you like roll your eyes or you just want to scream at the computer because it is. And we can start with you.
That AI replaces people. It absolutely doesn't replace people. Automation is a different paradigm. It's human in the loop, HITL. So you'll hear that over the next couple of years more than anything else. We're in an augmentation paradigm, meaning AI plus person, not AI or person. So that's the biggest misconception. You have to re engineer workflows for person plus the augmentation layer. What can we sort of delegate to these agents? But delegation doesn't mean you take your hands off the wheel yet. It's very much like an autonomous vehicle, where yes, we're getting close to self driving cars, and in some small circumstances, we can trust these, but the majority of what you're going to do at the office will be human in the loop, human plus AI.
And I think that's especially the case with HR, hopefully. Lydia, what's yours?
Yes to everything Vin said, and I think for me, one of the topics I've been nerding about recently, I'll probably do a blog on it very shortly as well, is the confusion between the intelligence and the communication layers of AI. It's like somehow we see chatbot and we're like, oh, AI, so every AI has to be a chatbot. The reality is there's a lot of technology that can surface as chatbots. The first chatbot came around the 1960s. They've been kicking around for a while, and the true intelligence part of the technology is very assessed at this point, I think, in the HR tech ecosystem. And it's also very ill understood in terms of like what level of intelligence you need before you think about how you surface that level of intelligence.
And Mercedes. No, audio's getting funky again.
Carry on, and then I'll come back. I'll log in,
No,
log
you're
up,
good.
and come back.
You're back. You're
I'm
back.
back.
Whatever you're doing, just keep doing it.
Okay, so two quick things. One, that we treat like a human is not human. And then the second piece, that we pre-assume that it's going to fix everything, so we pre-cut costs and people. That's it.
Yeah.
All right. So Vin, in some of your posts, you've posted quite a bit recently about like the impact of AI on jobs and stuff like that, which is what prompted us to invite you to join us. But you've described a future where there's like a person that's supervising or working with like 7, 10, maybe more, maybe less agents. So from the work that you're doing, like, are there any functions that are already kind of doing this today? And where do you see it heading next?
Well, the first place to think about AI is not generative AI, because we've been working on all of these other fields of AI for a lot longer. So when we talk about agents, the first thing that we have to clarify is that an agent isn't necessarily a chat interface agent. And generative AI is just that layer. It handles orchestration, it handles that user interface and that natural language or visual interface, but it doesn't do all of the things under the surface. So I want to very quickly, before I get into too much trouble, talk about this in terms of, yes, generative AI is important, but what we're seeing in terms of augmentation is coming in terms of, think about a warehouse. I want to go completely away from generative AI. You're seeing in Amazon, Walmart, and a number of other companies that are distribution logistics heavy, they are leveraging robotics, and they have a person who is in charge of a robotics team. That's the paradigm that Andy Jassy a couple of months back explained, where people would be, number one, there's the people who are maintaining, who are continuously improving, who are building the robotics, but there's also people who are supervising them as they do their work. They can't be left on their own. Something fails inevitably, and you need a person to handle those edge cases. And I want you to think about the robotics edge case now in your daily life, because it's exactly the same. You're going to need to rescue these agents that you're using for everything from booking flights to scheduling meetings with candidates. I think it's Chipotle that's using something called Avocado AI. And they're not using it for all of the things that everyone says, oh, these are the really cool use cases for AI and HR. No, they're just using it to help people fill out applications so that they complete it at a higher rate. And they're scheduling appointments. So you don't have to do those two main things. And the amount of time and the increase in completion rates are massive. So we're seeing this everywhere. AI is really everywhere in the workplace. But it's augmentation that we need to take a look at, because that's the paradigm. You're using AI today, but always keep in mind you're going to be supervising AI even as it gets more sophisticated, and you're continually coming to its rescue when it gets stuck in a corner.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember I think it was sometime earlier this week, or maybe with LinkedIn's algorithm, it was like 2 weeks ago and I just saw it this week. But you talked about how, you have to find, it's maybe, I'm going to kind of probably extrapolate a little bit, but there is, everybody wants to find that flashy use case for AI, right? Like, oh, this is really cool, and this really cool feature or technology or what have you. But I think you were talking about, when you see AI be successful, and it's really honing in on the use cases where it makes sense, where it's actually working and so forth. If I'm not mistaken, can you speak a little to that kind of post or the thinking behind that?
It. Workflow mapping is a huge part and a huge pre-step, because it does two things for the business. Number one, you understand what it is that you're trying to augment. Number two, you start gathering information about what's being done, and that information layer makes your agents more reliable. So that is a huge component of it. A good point to bring up. You have to understand the work that's being done in order to augment in the first place. And it's really being smart about where AI works and using AI for the things it's good at, not doing the things that maybe, the people with a little less experience in our field, and we're all in the AI world, let's just say we spend a lot of time pointing at people and going, you have no idea what you're talking about. And I don't know how people outside of the AI world are supposed to parse between, the people that sound good and the people that have significant experience delivering these things in the real world. But there is so much hype out there that it's critical to break down the silo between your technology team and your business, so that your technology team can inform use case selection with feasibility.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you hear me now, or am I broken again?
You're good.
Yay. I'm going to double down on
job.
that. I'm technical. I can fix my. This thing is going to mute me again. You speak too much, lady. That I'm doubling down. I joined HR because of the work as an athletic background. It's like we don't understand. Like, we're teaching people to do things that we don't understand. So it's all about the work. And I do love that HR is moving in the direction of the work, because one of the pet peeves I do have, that I saw a lot of cases that is almost like the leader just wanted something to say, we AI here. That's some random thing. We're all going to make shirts. We want AI. But to that point, one of the things in the shifts for HR is focus on that work. So then you can determine how to redo that. But at the same time, Vin, to that hyper, everything's so hyper. I do think sometimes the things that are not sexy are the things that I call the blisters, is what cause the most time consumption. Like, sometimes I just want basic automation to work. Sometimes you just need that to work, not the fancier things. But are you seeing us getting better at that, or we're still in the I want AI?
Well, no, everyone wants AI, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. If you have the right frameworks in place, you'll get the right kind of AI. If you understand the work that's being done and how your business creates value, you'll get the right AI. The bad news is most companies do not understand how value gets created, how work gets done, and the people that are selecting the AI products are not necessarily connected with the ground floor workflows and processes that the AI will integrate into. And that's our biggest disconnect right now. The reason why you see a whole lot of shiny object syndrome, where people are chasing the thing that's cool, but not necessarily the thing that delivers significant value, is because their perception of what gets done on the ground floor is very different than what gets done on the ground floor. So there's a really big difference that needs to come forward where you're looking at CEOs who are better connected with the way that their businesses create value. And that's, well, they're getting that connection through information management. They're getting that connection through more data driven analysis and understanding of the business, more transparency. So you're beginning to see a class of CEOs who's coming in and saying, this is exactly what we need AI to do for us. Here are our biggest business opportunities. What can you do for me here? And when you have that mentality and those types of frameworks, you get a significantly better outcome and significantly higher ROI when it comes to AI. But the majority of companies simply do not have that view. And if you look at the way that HR is transforming, HR is very slow to transform. And in many cases, there is the excuse of regulation. And I use this a lot, and this will probably be the one area we disagree on a little bit. But the excuse of
Shots fired, but
regulation,
I'm also kind of with you.
yeah, yeah, it's like the excuse of regulation, where we have regulations, therefore we can't do anything. And it's like, well, no, you have regulations, so you can't do that stuff. You can do all of these other things. And that's a really good example of having a C-level leader step in and say, okay, no, that's not a barrier to everything. That's a barrier to some things, and introducing common sense into the use case selection and the platform selection process.
I do think it also, it's not always like HR with their hands tied, right? Like I've worked for some organizations that are very, like they have very strong compliance teams or very powerful compliance teams. And so then, you know, is like I remember one of my HR bosses used to say, like, legal's job should be to help us, you know, what can we do within the limitations, and as opposed to starting with no and then fighting them to be able to get like past a little bit further. And so I do think, you know, it's not always HR, but there are definitely some challenges. But Mercedes and Lydia, you probably have a lot more to say about the legal barriers.
I saw
I
your
think it just
gloves come
depends
up. Go
on the
ahead.
class. Yeah, like, it depends on the class of leader that you have. It's just it's a bit of a mixed bag of Halloween candy, and I think unfortunately sometimes we get more Tootsie Rolls than we do get Kit Kat bars. That's why I don't love Tootsie Rolls. Just putting that out there. Um, but I do want to kind of go to a comment from the audience for a second, though, Martha, because I think there is something really interesting in the comment, which is it goes beyond just automation, because federal governments are having AI supervised AI and all of that. And yes, we have heard of those use cases. So then I wanted to know from your perspective, does scale matter in this conversation? And when I say scale, it's about the scale of the organization, but also the depth of technical expertise that the organization has access to. Does it matter in the case of how much AI or how much of doing AI an organization can take on?
Well, I think it's a couple of things, and it's not all technology. One of it is the rate of transformation of the organization. Can they transform their processes? Can they transform their tech stack? So you have three types of debt in every business. You have strategic debt, cultural debt, and technical debt. We talk a lot about technical debt slowing down transformation, but the strategic and cultural debt are just as bad. So when it comes to scaling, we're really not talking about how big. We're talking about that rate of change. How fast can you change? And that's where AI scaling runs into its biggest barriers. AI doesn't care if you have 10,000 users, 10 million users, or 10 users. It truly does not care. If you've got a cloud backing you up, you're good. If you've built scalable systems, you're good. So in a way, yes, there are technical barriers that need to be that need to be overcome, but we've solved these problems. We know how to scale AI. We know how to scale information architecture. We know how to do all of these things. Can every business do that? No, and that's where technical debt becomes a huge problem. Sometimes that sort of lock into the old technology is just as bad as the lock into the old way of doing things. And we have to be willing to consolidate. One of the biggest trends in AI right now is this consolidation trend to try to consolidate where our data is, consolidate where, what platforms the businesses uses, how many different tools we have across the enterprise that essentially do the same thing with a different label and an extra cost associated with them. So we have to think in terms of consolidation. We have to think in terms of optimization and making all of this transformation as low cost and as simple as possible. So if you address those three sources of debt, it doesn't matter which way you're scaling. You'll be a lot more successful, and the use cases will be more feasible because unit economics work out better when you start optimizing along those three lines, because a lot of the costs come from these fits and starts. A lot of the costs come from we have to do 18 different technical projects just to deliver one technical outcome. When you begin to reduce and optimize, you can deliver so much faster and the value goes up.
Yeah. And I'm totally off-roading us here. So sorry, Martha, and sorry,
Go ahead.
audience, but welcome to the off-roading path of our every Couch Club episode. So then you said something about consolidation and kind of taking a low-cost approach to this. A lot of us in HR today are looking at this as, oh, I got to do AI. Okay, well, let me go out there, buy new forms of technology to do AI. And on the other side, we also have a lot of vendor perspective to say, oh, you got to do AI. Let me throw all of these new AI tech and like branded things at you that says, by buying me, you're doing AI. What's your perspective on this?
Well, vendors are often throwing things at you that you don't want or need. And I want you to always have that in the back of your head. If it sounds like it's not something you need, don't buy it. Redirect them with here's my 2, 3, 4 biggest opportunities. Here's my 2, 3, 4 biggest challenges. What can you do for me? And don't let them tell you, well, we can do these other. Don't let the hand waving start. Don't let them start sprinkling the AI dust. Don't let that be the sales pitch. Tell them, redirect them and say, look, here's my opportunities. Here are the biggest opportunities that we have. Here are the biggest challenges. What can you do for me? And what you'll get is exactly what you need, because a lot of these companies, their sales pitch just kind of breaks down at that point because they're trying to sell you something that they can deliver that has AI, but it doesn't necessarily move the needle for you or for your business. And the consolidation component starts when you look around the organization and you realize how much of what you have doesn't do what it promised. And then you have to look at it in terms of where is my data? Because that's the first part of the migration path. Where is my information and data stored today? How am I going to move it to something different? Or can I make something new interoperate with this existing data source? The majority of mature AI platforms don't care where your data is. They'll figure it out. And you see this approach just across the board. They don't care. They work with pretty much everyone. They have an ecosystem platform model. Those are the questions to be asking. Make sure that you're consolidating down to a company that has a roadmap that aligns with your challenges, your opportunities, what you see instead of what they want to sell you. Don't let them just kind of talk their way into your wallet.
It goes back to the point that you were saying around the HR has the excuse of the whether it's legal or not. As the PMO, I run a lot into it's not legal versus that's how we've always done it. Because a lot of the things on my way, that's not legal, that's just how you've done it, and other things. But the bigger question now is what is the role of HR? And this is this thing that we're trying to figure out, because from my experience for a large organization, as we were moving in this direction, almost the pushback didn't come from, it wasn't HR IT, it's the compliance, legal risk compliance, privacy, and others, because it's a highly regulated industry. It was blaming HR. And then the second piece, as I was looking at my tech roadmap, I always start with business needs first, and then the technology enabling. But I was fighting the mindset of the technology is the product or the solution. And the second piece is my internal technical team trying to make the wins of AI, looking for cases to showcase. So you're fighting, you sometimes are fighting internally and externally with this mindset of what are we doing this for? And I think that we had so much pressure that sometimes we were just looking for those shiny quick wins. But now that we had that out of the way, can we go back to like, what is the business outcome? Start with the work. And then from there, because if we start with random business cases, to me, now we start to have completely disjointed employee experience and just random experiments that added no value. and I was like, what's our actual strategy and who owns this? So it's just a lot of pieces internally that I think it's a good time for HR to stop and be, what do we do now? What is our role now? What are we going to lead? What are we going to enable? And where are we going to just give guidelines? Because right now we're just kind of showing up and looking at different cases, in my opinion, in most places.
Well, and I mean, I saw something the other day that really resonated with me, that, you know, most functions, when they're having this conversation about AI, they're talking about, you know, how are we going to use AI, right? As a finance department, how are we going to use AI, as a marketing, what have you? Whereas HR is in this kind of unique position where they have to look internally at their own function, but then they also have to be involved in the conversation, like organization wide, right? So, you know, not necessarily how is finance going to use AI, but how do we make sure that finance has the people with the right skills and so forth to be able to do AI within finance, right? And so, kind of getting us back on the road, what, you know, what do you see as the role of HR in terms of that challenge that companies are having, given where we see jobs going with the introduction of AI and everything else?
I think it's what I've seen that's most interesting is a perspective I heard a few months back where people are arguing not so much does HR need to do these jobs, but what jobs must be done and who's the best person to do the job? What's the best role to take on these jobs? Because one of the things that AI does is it begins to take away some of your existing work, and you have more bandwidth to do things that you should have always been doing, that you always wanted to be doing, but that had to get triaged. And in engineering, we do this a lot where we triage some of the upfront and the back end just to, you know, because what happens in the middle expands so much and we have so much added in, timelines compress, and we don't have all the people that we would like, and we run into barriers that you wouldn't have expected to. So we have a need to figure out, how do we offload some of this work to AI? What do we offload to AI? And then you have to restructure your entire business. And this is the part that when I tell C-level leaders this, they both lean in and groan. They know they have to do this. They don't want to re-engineer their entire business. One of the trends I'm hearing talked about more and more, and I think we'll see the first company do this very, very soon. I think you'll hear this announcement this quarter or next quarter, is starting to put things like HR under IT. I think you will start seeing the CIO running organizations like an accounting organization where you would say, why would you do that? Well, it's because the majority of the accounting function is now a technical function, meaning it operates on the technology platform. The majority of HR is going to be a technical function. It will run on the technical platform. And this is where we're going to start re-engineering the entire business in such a way that it can operate in a more technical environment where the platform itself takes on an increasing share of the work. And the role itself, a lot of these roles, HR is going to become a more technical focused role. Accounting is going to become a more technical focused role. You'll see HR analytics come forward and do things like predictive workforce planning, exactly what you're talking about. But that's happening at the analytics and data science layers. So the role of the user changes significantly. You need domain experts who can, number one, contribute to the information gathering, number two, train some of these models, and number three, validate them, and then work with them to improve the overall organization so the organization itself can scale. So the role of an HR, anything from recruiting to generalists to any of the roles in HR, especially legal and compliance, increasingly technology focused, increasingly technical skills driven. And so there's a really dramatic change coming for what does HR, what do all of these supporting functions look like when we decide to turn them into growth drivers, when we decide to turn HR into a revenue generator. What does that function suddenly become? And it's very different than what it looks like today.
Disagree?
I have a follow-up question. So I'm going to put on my HRBP hat on and like stand on my HR runs the world pedestal for a moment. Okay, just bear with me here. So HR under IT. I'm with you logically. Now, putting my little HRBP hat on for a moment here, like there's a lot of feedback on this, right? In terms of like, well, IT doesn't get HR. Like we handle people, not machines. Like what about all the exception scenarios? What about all of the other things that we're dealing with, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? What do you have to say to that perspective?
So first, I mean, it's tough love time. Most people within the business would not agree that HR is a human-centric organization. They would agree that it's a leadership-centric organization. And I think that's the hard piece of this is that HR is in most companies beholden to protecting the business and protecting C-level leadership. It is not as focused on the frontline organization as the marketing and branding makes it out to be. Can HR change that if it's using AI? Definitely. And I think this is the opportunity that's coming forward is does HR want to hate workers? No. Does HR want to always take the side of leadership? No. But HR doesn't always have time to represent every worker and solve every worker's concern completely. HR needs information and modeling to push back against leadership perception and to be more effective in making the case for things that sound common sense but are very hard to justify without information and modeling. So that's what I would say back to sort of where you're going with IT doesn't get HR. That doesn't really mean they can't lead because HR is an increasingly technology oriented function. Will there be domain specific elements in HR that are people centric? Of course there will be. Will the CIO be an expert in people centric or organizational psychology? And no, 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 that's not where we're going. But the CIO is connected with the entire business, and the entire business needs information from HR. They need that data and information to do their work. And so the CIO is going to have the ability to best distribute all of that information across the business and get all that information back into HR from all of these disparate systems that HR really relies on but can't get access to. The CIO is also in charge of the hardest talent to source, CIO, CTO, CAIO, depending upon where, what company and where the maturity level is. They have the highest demands for talent and the highest end demands for talent. So they understand their sourcing pains best, who best to help improve not only talent acquisition, but also organizational development and training. If everyone's getting more technical, who best to lead that than the technical organization? But do they understand, exactly to your point, do they understand the intricacies of training and development? Sort of. I mean, we know what we've had to do all of our careers, but do we really understand adult education constructs and curriculum design? No. So, of course, there's going to be domain specific capabilities that need to be maintained by those organizations. But when you look at it as far as where do we go in the future, increasingly, the more augmentation you put into an organization, the more it makes sense. And especially when it comes to data flows, the more it makes sense for it to live under one of the technology organizations.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
But you think that the humans are going to always monitor and guide and others. So if it's human first, not technology first, why would it be under technology, not HR? And I'm just asking the question because to me, actually, they don't need to move physically because I was PMO, to me, I've always been able to differentiate the org chart versus the work chart. I just think at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter as long as the org chart is correct. But with that, I understand what you're saying on it's all digital mindset and technology, and we don't necessarily have those skills in HR. But I worked in IT. I'm going to push back on the fact that they have the skills that are non-technical that you actually need to succeed. So we need both of each other. So at the end, I fall into it doesn't matter as long as you have the leaders with the skills, and that's a more important question. But why wouldn't it be better to just upskill the HR person because he's human-centered than the IT person that to me has never been human-centered? Push back on me.
I don't think there's an either or. The
Yeah,
reason why I'm saying the organization change happens is because transformation is being driven by the technology organizations, and
that's true.
HR is not driving transformation even within their own organization.
That's
HR
true.
also doesn't have the access that it needs. And one of the big drivers for organizational change and moving the org chart is now you have access to any data that you need, and all of the different functions across the business that need HR data can get access to it. And you can do that in a secure, compliant way. Whereas before it was done in a kludgy one-off, more times than not at all way, where information was not flowing in or out, and the silo itself was becoming a significant barrier. So it's not just a matter of domain expertise, because you're definitely right. HR has domain expertise that you don't have in HR or in the IT organization. But the IT organization has the mandate for transformation. It's able to remove roadblocks to make transformation happen faster, and it has that access to data in a secure regime that can allow data to move back and forth more seamlessly. And both of those will, believe me, your life will be happier under a CIO than constantly fighting the same battles over and over and over again.
My only disagreement there is that if I had a 20th of the funding that technology has because it's a value, because we think it's technology, we would actually be able to do that. And the second piece, my job was actually harder because IT always thought that it was best and they knew best and they try to do internally something that I could have gotten. But at the end of the day, it really depends to me on the leader. With that said, I fully agree on the technologies leading because they have to. Because if somebody else is not leading, they have to. And in that, I am not going to debate with you because I fully agree, unfortunately,
Well,
because I like
the
debating.
reason why I would ask, the thing that I would ask, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, is you just said I don't have the budget because I'm seen as a cost center. Why are you seen as a cost center? Why aren't you seen as a growth engine?
I think we've
How
brought
far
that
in
on.
history do you want to go back?
I mean, we've brought that on ourselves quite a bit, right? Like we haven't traditionally gone to the table with the right metrics. I mean, this is people analytics, companies that are having more mature people analytics functions are getting to a place where they can start to make the case. And we're seeing in some of the data studies that are coming out that more and more they're starting to be able to say we've saved the company this amount of money, or we've generated this amount, we've increased sales by this amount of money. But you need a mature people analytics function to be able to do that. And to your point, that's a technical function still that sits within HR, right? And so we are starting to see that more and more. I think that I agree with both of you, but I agree with Mercedes that it doesn't necessarily matter. And we've had this debate. This is not the first time we've had this like HR IT debate, and this I think it's come up maybe 2 or 3 times. I don't remember how many times, ladies, on this series. But I don't really care if it's HR, or if it's an HR person that then oversees IT and HR, or an IT person that oversees them both. What I want is for both of them to kind of break down those silos and to work with each other better. So if putting them all under one umbrella, no matter which leader takes the top, we're seeing there's actually been some stories that have come out where it's actually the HR leader that then absorbs the IT function, right? Or vice versa. But I think the important thing, because to Mercedes' point, the people in the IT team, they don't always know enough about our function to be able to know like what are the right tools and all of that kind of stuff, right? On the HR side, you lack a lot of that technical capability unless you're talking about, your people analytics function for many companies is like 2 or 3 people, right? And a lot of companies have much larger teams, but for many companies, it's still the early journey. And so the goal would be, how do we get them talking to each other and really understanding each other? You have one side bringing the functional expertise, the other side bringing the technical expertise. And that same model, though, applies with all the other functions, to your point, right? Like the finance people, they have the finance expertise, because the worst thing you could have is, a technical team that brings you, here's your solution. And you're like, yeah, but that doesn't actually meet my needs, or that's actually not the problem that we were trying to solve for, or whatever it may be, right? And so I think you need both. And it's just that partnership. It's almost like before early days, the partnership was like the CHRO and the CFO needed to become best friends. And now it's almost like the best friends need to be all three, right? The CTO or CIO, whatever you call it, the CFO and the CHRO. And those three need to work in lockstep in order to be able to take the organization through this kind of AI transformation in a way that's actually going to work. But that's my thought.
But think about why you're not getting technology that meets your needs. That's the really important. It's not, this is the thing that companies have to keep doing. It's not enough to say that this is what's happened in the past. You have to figure out why. And this is a really common one. We are given technology from IT. IT is the one who's telling us this is what will solve your problems. Why is that happening? That needs to be a question that gets asked. If I'm buying a solution, if we're paying for a solution and it doesn't meet the needs, we need to figure out what went wrong with the decision-making process. And typically the reason why it happens, because I've had to dig into this with every single one of my clients, the reason why IT tells you this is the solution and it's the one solution to rule them all, you get it in your hands, it doesn't work. The reason why they don't listen to you when you say, we can just buy this solution off the shelf, you don't have to build everything yourself internally in-house with in-house resources, we don't need to do that, and they don't listen, is because there is a disconnect. They're accountable for spending the budget and making the technology work. You're accountable for the business level outcome. Once you put those two things together, however you do it, once you align it to say you are accountable for this business outcome, whether you're the one buying the technology or the one using it, you're not accountable for the technology outcome, you're accountable for the business level outcome. As soon as you make that change, everything starts to clean itself up, because you'll see IT show up at the doorstep and say, okay, so we don't really know how to make that outcome happen. We don't know how you do your job. So we're going to need you in the room, because if we buy the wrong thing, it's not enough to now just implement it. And, we met our milestones for putting a solution in place. We have to meet our value milestones. And I think you'll see a huge change if you align those outcomes, metrics, and KPIs with business value, not technology value.
I mean, and we're seeing similar patterns pop up in like the HR domain, right? Like more and more when you have a CPO or CHRO who is very business focused, more and more they're saying, look, we have to stop measuring ourselves on like HR metrics, right? Turnover, number of people hired, or whatever other HR metrics, which are important for like from an operational perspective to see how things are going. But you're more and more seeing, okay, these are the business, like company-wide strategic priorities, increasing customer reach in these areas or decreasing costs in these areas, whatever it may be. Our priorities and our goals need to be tied to those things, right? And if they're not, then we're not doing our job. And so that's something like me and my boss are working a lot on is, okay, these are the things, these are our goals. How do we make sure that the programs, initiatives, and so forth we're putting in place are supporting those things? And so I think, I really love that idea of putting that kind of ownership on IT to say same like as we are doing to ourselves. You're responsible for supporting the business outcome. You're not responsible for implementing on time or the number of times people log into the system or whatever it may be.
Yep. Yeah. Hold us accountable, please.
Yeah.
And I think thematically speaking, just based on the conversation so far, it is basically a mindset shift that you're asking of HR within the broader mindset shift of that adopting AI that's already happening, essentially. And I feel like this mindset shift of asking HR to think along the lines of the business, it's been sort of going on for the last decade, probably more than that at this point. And in a way, I think going back to our previous conversation, I almost feel like how we teach HR people to be HR people in a way is what's failed us up until this point, because we don't teach HR people to be systematic thinkers. It's almost kind of like having art history undergraduates trying to function in an engineering graduate paradigm, which is how most modern organizations are set up at its core. And I think this is where we're kind of start to see the struggle and the rub of why IT gets all the budget, why everyone listens to IT. And then HR is kind of like waving our flag up high here, going like, guys, but we matter too. And why isn't anyone paying attention to us?
Yeah, that's the biggest. Oh, go ahead.
You can actually hear me now. You're opinionated. My concern, having done the role in between, is that if he goes to IT, they're still going to treat the technology as a product with those metrics, and if it's HR, same thing. So I would love to have that whoever is leading, I don't care, the right skills, to just be called something different, so that we're not doing it in service of the tech or just in service of the human, but something in between, chief work officer, chief whatever we want. But totally agree. Right now, we still have the issue of the efficiency metrics instead of like the outcomes metrics, and neither understanding the business outcome. We're really focused on our silo and our line of business. So no debates with me there. I guess, doing it to the tech, I'm really concerned these bots are going to take over the world and treating them like humans. Vin, you may not know that I tested a boyfriend for 6 months, an AI boyfriend. I'm really concerned about what it's doing to our relationships. So
Her husband was okay with it. It was just a little experiment.
Vin, you and I can but because I am really
Tested.
I my therapist, she's like, "What are you doing?" Listen, it's a whole thing. Number one use case is therapy, right? If we continue to just use it as is the technology, then the technology becomes the thing. And I'm just concerned that the semantics matter, where you put it as the value or your organization matter. Please, by all means, put it to the most technical person, but call it something else. That's all. Otherwise, the boyfriend's going to take over the world, and I'm going to go on mute now again. That's enough.
Please don't. Please don't. Do not use AI for therapy, please. There are more and more studies coming out on a weekly basis showing how dangerous this is. Please don't do it.
But we are. That's what we need.
I understand the reality of it. I'm just saying this is a trend we really need to reverse.
Don't do the boyfriend. It's not worth it.
Well, it goes back to the intelligence layer versus a UI layer, right? Like, we react to natural language. So when something starts talking to us in natural language, we're like, oh, it feels human. So therefore it must be human on the other side. And our lizard brains kind of kick in and apply all of the subconscious biases of what we would do and how we would interact if the other party was human, without acknowledging that it is truly a model of ones and zeros running in the background.
Yeah, I mean, look at all the pushback ChatGPT got when they changed models and people were like, I lost my friend and this, that, and the other, right? Like, people were legit upset because it was not talking to them the way it used to talk to them. And, you know, that's a problem, right? And that's something that, yeah. Anyway, so, okay, I don't know if we're gonna do gloves again, because the more like the prep sessions, we kept like, okay, Vin, yeah, I guess I agree with you. So we promised everybody a fight. We had a little bit of it, not a fight, a debate. We had a little bit of their HR versus IT, but yeah, you've been quite skeptical. I think you and I had like many comments going back and forth on one of your posts about, you know, HR and the value that the function brings and so forth. And I don't disagree with you in terms of there are a lot of bad HR teams out there, right, that are not doing their job well. But I think they give a bad rep to everybody. But I want to hear from you. Like, if you were to say, okay, an HR professional, this is what you really need to do if you want to be that strategic partner, if you don't want to just get, you know, aside from learning technical skills, but if you don't want to just get absorbed by IT and be told what to do or what have you, like an HR person who wants to have a seat at the table, whether that's with, you know, a smaller team within the organization or at a C-level or what have you, like, what is it that we should be doing as HR professionals to make sure that we are adding value and we are supporting and not inhibiting this kind of AI transformation?
Well, the first thing you have to do is become information consumers, because HR talks about data but does not consume information very well. Information means that you will have to change the way that you operate. Right now, the job interview process is completely dysfunctional. The hiring cycle is 100% dysfunctional. Ask anyone who goes through it on any side of the table. I think HR people are the only ones who are saying, no, this works. If you ask people who are hiring, seriously, ask tech hiring managers, does this work? They go, no, I have to do things so much faster or this top candidate is evaporating on me. Someone in the Mag 7 will offer them 30% more. And the only reason why I have a chance at getting this person right now is because they don't realize it. And if they're on the market too long, a recruiter from one of the Mag 7 is going to find them and offer them anywhere between 25 and 100% more than we are. So we have to move faster. And HR is like, nope, can't do that. And so you have on one side this 6 weeks of a hiring cycle. That's a lifetime when it comes to trying to pull somebody in for AI. If we can't get offer letters out the door faster after one or two conversations, I'm going to lose access to top talent. And so we have to have these really tough conversations about what we're transforming and how we're transforming to meet this reality that's undeniable. There are definitely some roles where you can slow walk until the end of time, but it's those top talent, front of mind for the CEO roles. We have to move so much faster. And HR typically will throw up multiple barriers in the way instead of working with us to create a secondary process. There are other companies where HR just creates the secondary process because it's a tech-first company and the mandate comes from the top. We need this talent, therefore we'll figure out how to do it. So it's not impossible. It's not illegal. It is different, and it's going to change things dramatically. So you have to be information driven, and we have to be outcomes centric. This is the same problem technology organizations have. This is the same problem AI teams have. If you look at what's happening in the reorg inside of Meta right now, this is exactly what's driving it. Research focus, yeah, that doesn't work. Sort of vanity metrics that the company doesn't care about as a whole, don't work. They don't work for us, they don't work for HR. We have to be value and outcome centric. We have to be aligned with core strategy. And if you do that, doesn't matter what organization you work in. If you become an information consumer, if you figure out how to use information to drive better decision making and how to use it to transform so that you are more value and outcome centric, you've got a job for easy the next 25 years. But if you're not doing that, if you're one of the people, Mercedes, who's saying things like, this is how we've always done it. Just to your point, if you're saying this is how we've always done it, and then you throw up an excuse on the other side because you don't want to do the tough work of change, those are the people who AI is just going to pick up and move out of the way. And that's the danger, is if we dig our heels in too much, and that's true for us too. Coding tools will replace, right here, you will see an AI consultant if I dig my heels in this spot in 2 years instead of me on this podcast. You'll see an AI agent that looks better than I do and has better one-liners than I have doing this podcast if I'm not responsive to the information and if I'm not continuously transforming.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I'm going to agree, but the blame on HR disagree a little bit because we're romanticizing that the tech people actually know what they want. So many times HR has to help them with the job description. Also, half the time the hiring manager doesn't show up. It's me chasing the hiring manager to show up. So agree with the what, agree with the solving, not necessarily who's at fault always, but fully agree on the digging our heels. It doesn't matter. We all need to do better. That was my little spiel for my HR peeps.
Well, I think it's just we need to all be a little more human to each other, right? Because it's almost like in one case, let's say the hiring manager is at fault. Now that case gets spun up into a use case like a giant LinkedIn post about now every hiring manager is evil. Same thing, vice versa. One recruiter who's a bad apple in the mix doesn't show up for conversations for whatever reason. Now every recruiter and every sourcing person is at fault for not being able to bring technical talent in fast enough. I think it's the bias that we apply to use cases sometimes, but also to like understand that there's also another human at the other side of the interaction.
Yeah. And I think the solution, we're going to come back to repeating it. The more we tie, whether you're HR or IT or any other function, the more you tie your success, and oh, by the way, built into goals that then inform things like bonus payouts and, salary increases or promotion decisions or what have you. But the more we tie the work that we're doing to those business outcomes as opposed to vanity metrics, I'm going to use that, Vin, that's where you start to see these like secondary processes pop up. right? Or this way to kind of get around things, because short of that or shy of that, what gets measured gets done, and that's just kind of where I'm going to keep coming back to.
But then you left me hopeful, because I feel like we can be friends and we can go forward. Really, because I do think that we need to get out of like HR's an idiot, because a lot of the vendors come at us, well, like, you're an idiot. There are things that are really, really complex, because we have the org, the leader, the employee, the candidate. And of course, I cannot be product minded. If I do what you want, we're going to get sued out of existence, right? And if we don't do this work, we're not going to exist anymore, because another company with 3 people will replace us all. And we need to be all of the things. But you gave me a lot of hope that we can disagree. We can, because I don't think we disagree that much. If we can just agree what skills and what work needs to happen in the future and stop all the nonsense, because that's in the past. What do we do now and how do we build it? My only ask is that we don't put the human last, whoever can be human first, and that the bots don't take over, and that the boyfriends of the whatever are not leading our humanity, and that they're in service of the human, not the other way around. Because it's really easy. None of this technology that has promised us a better humanity has given me time back. We're more burnt out, we're alone, we cannot connect. Maybe that's not the business thing that you're trying to build, but at the end of the day, what are we doing this for, and how are we going to create new metrics and a way of working that get us both to better work and better outcomes without just all being depressed and sad and blaming HR? That's all my ask. But you left me very hopeful, Vin. Look at that. I couldn't disagree much with you there. I just wanted to give a shout out to my HR peeps, because we do seem to be blamed a lot for things. Some okay, but some of my, it's hard to be humaning with you, all of you, and try to like make you happy, and then ensure that we're not discriminating, and that I'm a Latina, that there's still 1% of us, there's a reason, and this, etc. Who's not at the table and whose voice is not there. But look at us. We can be friends and win, but we got to act. We cannot dig our heels, and we cannot 100% with you. This is not legal. That's a lot of nonsense sometimes. And the same with, this is how we've only done it before. I fully agree there.
So we're almost at time. We like to, hopefully everybody's already taken a few nuggets to, home with them. But, we do like to make sure that everybody has something very concrete that they can take away to say, this is something I can do, right? So for people, for an HR team, you do have some people that are technical, but you probably have a lot of people that are not very technical. So short of, going and learning data science or something like that, what are a few things that your average professional, doesn't have to be HR, but your average professional who is not very technical at this point in the game, what can they do to kind of really prepare themselves for what's coming in terms of, companies really starting to adopt AI in a way that it starts to change jobs, not eliminate jobs, hopefully, but change jobs?
I think the number one thing to realize is that everything is becoming more technical, but what it means to be technical is also changing. So being able to build out something like a knowledge graph, being able to be a knowledge architect, and to engineer your domain expertise into some sort of knowledge management system, that's technical. And it's something that you can pivot into pretty quickly. It's an area where you go from being an information consumer to an information curator. You can also help to define what it is that you do and learn to identify where automation can come into play, help choose the solutions that the business deploys in order to help support your function, and also learn how to be a better supervisor of these bots. Learn how to be not just an information consumer, but also sort of a bot wrangler. Where are places that these AI agents can make a difference in your workflow? How do how do you re-engineer the workflow? How do you re-engineer your processes? Those are also technical constructs. And if you're good at math, you're going to love the next decade. So the closer you are to math, the better off you're going to be. That's another type of technical capability. So it's not just writing code, it's information management, knowledge management systems, and building the functions and the models around what it is that you do for a living. Your domain expertise is more important than it's ever been, but we have to re-engineer things. And so being flexible, being willing to transform continuously not just a one-time we get to a finish line. There is no transformation finish line anymore. So those would be my actionable takeaways. Those are the things that you have to get ready to do. Become a whole lot more disruptive. Think less about continuous improvement and more about continuous transformation.
Disruption is the new norm. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Next month, we will be back. So just watch, the three of us. I'm like this, but for more information about what that topic is going to be. But thank you, Vin, for joining us. It's been very, very enjoyable conversation for myself, but I think I speak for all of us. And enjoy the rest of your day or evening, wherever you are in the world, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.